Hey, Paisanos, it's me, Hamish Steele, and welcome to another Super Mario moment. Today we are discussing Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins, which was released on the Nintendo Game Boy in 1992. It is the second of the Mario Land series and actually was the last original Mario platform game until 2006's New Super Mario Bros., if you can believe that. It is currently available on the Nintendo Classics range, and to discuss this game, I have brought on my first Glitterjaw friend. That's right. Super Mario Moment is a proud member of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcasting Collective, and there's so many great podcasts on there, including, of course, Walloping Web Snappers, Novel Gaming, Falling with Style, and my personal favorite, Screonk. And a wonderful co-host of all of those shows is with me today. I am joined, of course, by Doug, aka Icky Bully.
Oh, hello.
Which, who all our audio listeners is sporting a pair of very wonderful ears. Clearly, you've been eating your carrots.
Exactly. I had one right before we started.
Yes, Mario Land 2 is the game in which Mario gets the powers of a Playboy bunny, which is very enjoyable. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about my very first Mario game.
Wow, that is very exciting. That's often my first question when I ask guests to come on. So yeah, let's tell me about yourself, just in general, and then we can talk about your history with gaming and everything.
Yeah, sure. I'm Doug, and if people already know me on the internet, it's almost certainly because of podcasting. I just totally hit my camera. Sorry. I've been doing it for almost 10 years. I primarily podcast about media, TV, movies, stuff like that. Sometimes video games. And recently, like a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, my frequent co-host Derek and I got together with some of our friends who are also queer podcasters who talk about media, and started the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective in the interest of supporting other queer podcasters and sharing resources and putting more queer voices out into the world.
Yeah, I mean, I love all your shows. I'd love you to tell me more about Novel Gaming, seeing as this is also a gaming podcast.
Yeah, Novel Gaming was one of the many, many, many podcasts born out of the pandemic. It is basically a podcast version of what my two co-hosts and I were already doing to stay in touch. We met at a job, and then we all moved in different directions, and we kept in touch over video calls and playing video games. And so we would do that, and we would always talk about what games we were playing and what books we were talking about. And so we just kind of spun that off into a podcast. We do 2 episodes every month. One is dedicated to a book. One is typically dedicated to a video game or a video game topic.
That's great. I mean, I love it a lot. And I kind of want to know, aside from Mario, what your like typical games of choice are. What kind of genres do you like?
Yeah, I like I think my big genres are probably platforming and like life sim cozy game type stuff. Pretty much all the stuff I grew up playing were platformers, between like Sega and PlayStation. Pretty much everything I was playing was platforming. And then cozy games now, with Stardew Valley like hooked me, and it's sucked a lot of my time. But they're nice. I like the cycle of them, and they're very relaxing.
I started playing a fun, cozy game recently called Is This Seat Taken?
Yeah.
Which is very enjoyable, but it does force you to sort of let people use their phone in movie theaters. You have to like choose where everyone sits in a place, be it a restaurant or whatever. And there's times where it's like this person wants to use their phone in a movie theater, and this person wants to like talk loudly in a movie theater. And I'm like, why am I humoring them? I want to throw them out.
Right, banished.
It is a cozy game, but it does enrage me more than it possibly should.
That makes sense to me.
So, what is your history with Nintendo and Mario, other than Mario Land 2 being your first game?
Yeah, I feel like a bit of a fake amongst your guests because I didn't grow up a Nintendo kid.
Hmm.
The first video game console I remember playing was actually a Sega Master System, as opposed to an NES. I think that my brother probably wanted an NES, and I think what we got was a Sega Master System. So that was the first thing I remember playing. And we didn't even have like Sonic for it. So I don't, we were playing like a Spider-Man game here, a racing game there. There was a game called Aztec Adventure that I really, really loved. And then after that, it was a PlayStation. We jumped right to a PlayStation 1. My Nintendo gameplay comes in through handheld gaming. My parents
Mm.
never bought a Nintendo home console, but we always had whatever the Game Boy was. So for a long time, the only Nintendo games that I would play at home were things on Game Boy or Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons I like doing this podcast, because obviously I talk to some like Mario super fans who can tell you every single detail about every single Mario enemy and whatever. But I feel Mario is Mr. Video Games. And basically, if you've ever touched a game console or a controller, you have probably played a Mario game at once in your
Hmm.
life. So everyone has some memory, be it like, you know, hugely impactful or just a small sort of nice memory.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think handheld games as well are very significant to a lot of people's nostalgia and fond memories. A lot of the guests I've contacted to be on the show, they often bring up this game and other Game Boy games first as
Hmm.
the ones that they've got the fondest memories of.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's something about Game Boy that was almost like a Wii like quality before the Wii, where people who didn't consider themselves like video game players still played games on a Game Boy. I know
yeah,
a
for
lot of
sure.
people whose parents like played Game Boy but no other games.
Yeah, for sure. And I think now we're all used to, you know, having our own screens and having our own phones and switches and things like that, and gaming separately. But at the time, that was very novel to have your own game that kind of was just for you, even with the terrible screen that couldn't work in the light, but also needed the light. It was all
Ooh.
very tricky. Like, that was your personal experience. So I do
Mhm.
think, even though Nintendo might rank the like Mario Brothers games and the Mario World games as more significant achievements, I think to a lot of people it was the Mario Land games and the Game Boy games that they would play over and over and over again, uh, probably sinking way more hours into Mario Land 2 than I have personally than to any of the console games.
Yeah, that's my experience for sure. I mean, this is a probably the only Mario game I've played more than twice. I've played this significantly way more times than any other Mario game. Probably more than most other platformers I've played.
Hmm. Do you have other Mario games that have any fond memories?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is patchy because for a while I would have to go to like friends' houses to play
Mhm.
anything. So a lot of the Mario games I played early would have been like Mario parties and Mario Karts and stuff like that. But I always saw it as like a social franchise for that reason, which was nice.
Mm.
And then, you know, when I did get my own GameCube, my secret GameCube, because my parents wouldn't buy it and would have been real mad if they found out that I spent money on that. On my secret GameCube, I did play Super Mario Sunshine. So that was my first like big like Mario console game that was like just
Mm.
mine to play from beginning to end. So I'd played other, you know, other games prior to that, particularly like Mario All Stars. I remember playing a lot
Mm.
of that at friends' houses. But Mario Sunshine was my first big console one, so I have a big fondness for that one. And then moving forward, I was buying my own consoles. So you know, Mario Galaxy is one that I really really loved. I just recently started playing Super Mario Odyssey because I'm very behind on that one. But yeah, I mean those are very similar to the games I grew up playing on PlayStation, like a Crash Bandicoot or Spyro. That's like
Mm.
kind of my comfort zone in gaming.
Hey, Odyssey is still the latest one, even if it is approaching 8 years old.
Yeah.
So,
I know, that blew my mind that it was
yeah.
8 years old.
It's getting there. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a very good game. It makes up for the time that's been spent, but it's not a Mario game. So
It's not.
cool. I mean, aside from Mario Land 2, which we're gonna cross over into talking about now, being your first game, what about it do you think makes it something you wanted to bring here and talk about?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, being my first game was the first thing that came to mind, but also when I asked you if anything or if anyone had like claimed this game yet, I said it as like, hey, I don't know if anyone's taken this. I'm guessing someone has because of Wario. And I was shocked that no one had because this is Wario's first appearance. And I think one thing that's been interesting to sort of reflect on as far as like my relationship with the Mario games is that this game was my formative game. So Wario was my first big bad. And Wario is a character that I feel like a strong connection to. And I'm sure it has to do with the fact that he was in my very first Mario game. So I'm excited to talk about Wario.
Yeah, I mean, we can start there if you like, because yeah, this is Wario's first appearance. To give a tiny little bit of backstory about this game, obviously it's the sequel to Mario Land 1, but it couldn't look more different. It couldn't play more differently. Mario Land 1 is quite dated. I enjoy it. It has great music and it has some really fun design, but it really feels like the team trying to learn how to use a Game Boy.
Yeah.
The sprites are so characterless, I would say. Compared to Mario Land and then eventually the whole Wario Land series, where we're watching on screen at the moment a boss battle against a witch, and it's just the funniest sprite ever. I think that Mario Land 2 was them really trying to show off what a Game Boy can do. And in terms of production, they were told to go as far away from the Mario formula as possible. And then apparently, I don't really know what they created, but they were told to rein it in by quite a lot. And bring it much closer to Mario World, which I do think these Mario World and Mario Land 2 have a sort of, in the same way that like the new Super Mario Brothers games all have kind of like a visual feel that feels connected. I think these two games too. So it was a kind of experiment in seeing how far we could go, and it does introduce a lot of strange things. Like the first Mario Land game, it doesn't have Bowser as the boss, and it doesn't have Peach being kidnapped as the storyline. This time around, Mario's private island and castle has been stolen by a hitherto unmentioned Bizarro Mario called Wario. And what I find interesting is that in the short time I've been doing this podcast, Wario has come up a lot. More than Yoshi, Peach, Luigi, Donkey Kong, Bowser even. People want to talk about Wario. And you said that he was very formative to you.
Yeah.
What is it about Wario that you think all my guests have been wanting to talk about straight away?
I am not surprised that Wario is coming up seemingly disproportionately on this podcast. I think there is something inherently queer about Wario. I think there is something, at the very least, something about Wario that appears to queer people. I think if you look at the Super Mario universe, if you consider the whole thing inherently queer, which I think is an easy argument to make despite everything being presented in a very heteronormative way, I think Wario represents something very specific in that context. I think Wario, as this Bizarro version of Mario, is more of a like radical, more authentic, more specifically queerness than everything else around him. I think Mario doesn't represent a traditional like hero because he's like a short, chubby plumber, who has a mustache and doesn't quite look like everybody else, which is kind of queer. But if Mario's queer, I think he represents like a pretty clean, sanitized version of queerness. And I think Wario represents like this less inhibited, more authentic, radical version of that. And I don't know how true these stories are, but people talk about Wario being born out of sort of a resentment for having to make a Mario game in the first place. I don't know if that's true, but even if it isn't true, I think that idea of Wario being this reaction to Mario, I think also kind of appeals to queer people. Mario's the protagonist. Mario gets all the nice things. Mario is always celebrated. And so I think marginalized people already will find themselves in the supporting cast. And when you have somebody like Wario who doesn't really seem to care about Mario's, nice hero image, I think it makes a lot of sense to me.
I think especially at this time, because this is Wario's first game, and eventually we obviously get Waluigi, but we also start associating Wario with a few other things, his treasure hunting, and he gets a game company and becomes a capitalist at some point. At this stage, he's just the kind of anti-Mario, and I think what's quite funny about this game is that even though Mario is the main character and everything, there's a sort of underlining, maybe Mario's a bit of a weirdo too. Like, he has an island called Mario Land. He has a zone on his land which is a giant statue of himself. He owns a castle which has a gnarly door, which there's no hint that Wario's done any like redecorating or anything. That's just what Mario's castle looks like.
Right. Wario didn't build that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you do save the princess like 3 or 4 times, you are probably given some bit of land on whatever. But I do think it's funny that, Mario started off as a carpenter, then a plumber, but then almost straight away in Donkey Kong Jr., he was the villain. He had kidnapped Donkey Kong. He played as Donkey Kong Jr. And like kind of from the offset, Nintendo seemed happy, probably less so now, but at the time, to play with Mario's kind of, is he good? Is he bad? What's kind of going through his head? And I think Wario is kind of created to answer some of those questions that clearly there's people in this world who resent him. He's obviously the bad guy, but ultimately all he's done is, redistributed the wealth. He's like claims the castle.
Right. Obviously Wario at his worst, like you said, when he's owning a gaming company, he is often characterized as like a representation of greed and all these sort of undesirable characteristics, but ultimately it's born of like wanting sort of a piece of the pie, or at least knocking Mario down a peg.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up later, but it seems relevant to talk about now because we're just talking about Wario. But there is a loose comic adaptation of this game. It was released in Nintendo Power. It's called Mario versus Wario, and it offers a little bit of a backstory to their rivalry. This came out the year after the game was out. And there's sort of never been any other information about their relationship. So this being like somewhat officially released, I do think is quite interesting. In this comic, we sort of see, it reminds me, do you know the 30 Rock bit of Liz Lemon remembering how she was in high school? You're grimacing.
I don't.
I barely know 30 Rock, but there's this like infamous bit which talks about how she was bullied in school. And then you actually see a flashback and she's being the bully. Like,
oh my god,
she's got glasses and she's a nerd. But like in her memory, the popular kids were like, nice telescope, Liz.
Yeah.
But then you see what actually happened and they're like, nice telescope, Liz, can we use it? And then she's being really mean to them. So in this purported backstory, they were friends. The drawings are extremely cute of Mario and Wario. The art's by someone called Charlie Nozawa, and it's written by Kentaro Takakuma. And yeah, so they both have these like slightly different memories of growing up. Mario is actually like delighted to see his friend Wario, who he hasn't seen for 20 years, which I'm like, how old is Mario at this point? And he's remembering all the fun they had, but then Wario is like, It's been 20 years and he still makes me furious. I remember the time Mario asked me to pick vegetables in his garden, and when I went to help him, he took the row of turnips and let me pick piranha flowers. And there's a picture of piranha plant biting him. We see him getting squashed by a thwomp. And this is my favorite bit. When they used to play cowboys, we must have played sheriff and rustler 1,256 times. Mario got to be the sheriff 125. Sorry, I can't even read. It's really tiny things. It's funny in the comic. Mario got to be the sheriff 1,255 times, and I was only sheriff once. Again, this seems to purport that Mario is a bit of like an oblivious, privileged sort of, not evil, but just like completely unaware of the effect he's having on people.
Yeah, at the very least he's like at the very least he's unaware, and then a degree above that is he's maybe inconsiderate, like
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do think nowadays Nintendo wants him to be slightly safe and sanitized, and just everyone loves Mario. There's no issues of him whatsoever. But I think this gives him tons more character. And actually, he gets compared to Mickey Mouse a lot because he's kind of used in the same way. I think Mickey Mouse has a bit more of that personality sometimes. A tiny bit more of that like selfishness that Mario's kind of not allowed to have.
Yeah, it's interesting. That comic, you sent it to me, and that's the first time I had read it, and I was like kind of shocked because I'm reading it way out of context and was like surprised that they were willing to make Mario kind of look maybe like a jerk. And what's interesting about it is you do get both of their perspectives, but by the end of the comic, like, it's pretty easy to believe Wario because like they pick right back up and it's kind of exactly what he expected. And there's a moment where Mario's like, hey, don't be such a wimp. Like it's a really, really wild thing to see. But I agree with you. I do like it. I think it's nice to see that these characters can have like more believable relationships because Wario has this character flaw that you don't typically get to see. If he's unaware or inconsiderate, you could do a lot with that.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that what came of this game was a whole series of Wario Land games.
Yeah.
They could have easily just kept making Mario Land games. Maybe they would have sold better. But you get the feeling the developers just had so much fun using the like Game Boy to pastiche in some ways the more popular and more mainstream Mario games.
Yeah.
Even just in this game, like Wario's sprite is just so funny.
Oh my gosh, it's really, really funny. I mean, Wario is theirs, right? Like the folks who developed this game, it's like the sort of like their unique mascot for what they were doing, since they didn't like create Mario. So Wario's theirs. It makes a lot of sense. It is very funny seeing his sprite in this one because it's more like a proto Wario than it is what we're familiar with, because he kind of just looks like a goofy Bizarro Mario more than he looks like his own thing.
Yeah, this isn't like greedy, ha ha ha, have a rotten day. This is like crazed Mario.
Yes, like googly eyes sort of version of Wario.
Yeah, he makes me think of like the Gremlin or whatever in Gremlins 2 or something that's just loopy. Oh my god, do you know the Key and Peele Gremlins 2 sketch? Or am I just going to keep on referencing things?
No, I'm making a mental list though of all
no,
the
it's okay. I just in my head there's a whole sketch about them pitching Gremlins 2, and now I want to do the same thing, but it's pitching Mario Land 2, and like, can we have an evil Mario? You're just talking about a garlic eating, treasure stealing. Anyway. Let's put Wario to bed for just a second. I know we might want to do that in our free time anyway, but
you beat me to it.
Let's talk about Mario Land 2.
Yeah.
This game is really fun, and I've played it all this week in preparation for this. And one of the things I found really interesting was it has an almost like non-linear like way of doing things. It kind of makes me think that maybe during Mario World, which also has a kind of island map overworld, that this was like a idea they couldn't implement there, but they're implementing now. let's talk about the land itself.
Yeah.
As someone who plays this game, what do you do when you arrive in a game and you can go anywhere from the offset?
Yeah, I mean, what I do now is certainly different than what I did as a kid. As a kid, I think I appreciated it a lot because it meant that each world had a first level, which was probably easier than most other things. So if I was really challenged with a level, I could just go to a different world or go
Mm.
backwards or whatever. Now I've gotten kind of into a routine that I feel like I should break. But when I start the game, I pretty much almost always go to tree zone first and then work counterclockwise around the map. I don't like jump around or it's like very methodical, and I feel like I got to break that routine.
I'm exactly the same because I don't know if it's the autism or just like wanting to make sure I 100% it.
Yeah.
I the game gives me the option to go where I want, and I try and choose what I think the game would make me choose if there wasn't an
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
Um, but it's fun. I mean, I like the ability to, go to the castle. It's quite fun having the final level always there, so you can like
Yeah.
visit it. There is actually quite a lot of little secrets in the map
Mhm.
and things you can do. I do appreciate it. I also appreciate that in terms of a world one, if we're going to call the tree zone that,
Yeah.
and all the zones, they feel it's not just grass, desert, water, volcano. They all have a real unique style.
Yeah.
What's your like overall favorite?
Yeah, well, oh, that's so hard. I do think I gravitate towards Tree Zone and probably Pumpkin Zone
Mm.
because the Tree Zone is probably the one I've played the most, and it's like naturey, and I think it's kind of cool, and it does some naturey stuff that I don't know if I've seen in other Mario games. And the Pumpkin Zone is spooky, so I'm always gonna like the spooky levels.
Yeah, the tree zone isn't just a tree zone. You like go inside the tree. You're dealing with there's kind of like a nectar sappy sort of level, which is
Hamish,
really fun.
can I tell you that my whole life until 2 days ago, I had no idea what that was supposed to represent despite being in a tree, and I just in my mind was always like, "Oh, that's the level with, like, the gel." And then the other day, I
Mm.
saw that it was meant to be, like, sap or nectar, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this, like, never occurred to me. I'm literally inside of a tree."
Well, there's a few gooey levels,
Yeah.
so you can be forgiven for thinking it's something else. Um, yeah, I mean the levels inside the whale
Oh,
um,
yeah.
is very cool. Even the creepy Mario toy world is uh, it's not my favorite, but like it's unique. It's not
Yeah.
like any other level. And then for me, yes, the spooky zone is my favorite, the pumpkin zone. And again, it's not just a haunted house. It
Mhm.
has its own, and each level in these games is really different. Um, the pumpkin zone in this feels so 90s and inspired by like slasher movies and
Right.
horror movies. There's obviously the Goombas, I guess, are all wearing Jason masks, which
Yeah.
is hilarious.
With, like, a
Um,
little, like, machete in their head. Like,
yeah,
it's so wild.
it's the most Halloweeny feeling I've got in a Mario game before, for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole yokai like level where
Yeah.
that's really cool. Um, and I think even though I think also this game just in general, like all the worlds and all the enemies are so odd and unique that whenever you come across a Goomba or a Koopa Trooper, they feel kind of out of place or
Yeah.
like they're mandated to be there.
Right, they feel like the interlopers in this world that, like, they came to. Like, they weren't here to begin with, you know?
Yeah, I think Mario probably like imported a few for his hunting range.
Yeah, his invasive species, the Goomba.
Um, and there's some fun bosses. I don't think anything, at least as a grown up, none of this is
Mhm.
particularly challenging.
Yeah,
Um, but the boss battles are definitely fun. They're funny. It's like the proto Wario Land stuff is in this game where
yeah,
slowly as that series goes on, they put a lot more humor into everything. But you can
yeah.
see it, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the expressions that the villains make in particular is very, very much what you become familiar with Wario games. I do think the bosses. I wish I felt more of a connection with them because they're not much of a presence in the game, and the battles themselves are like remarkably easy in comparison to what you might expect from a boss battle. But I do remember like the three little pigs are like so burned into my brain
Mm,
because they are the boss, I think, that feels different and feels like it has a natural progression to it in the way that you might expect,
yeah,
next and final form boss type of situation.
for sure. I agree. I think the bosses, they can be a little generic, like it's just a witch and a
Hmm.
bird, and they're funny sprites. But the pigs are the one that feels, yeah, because it's kind of three bosses in one.
Hmm.
Inherently jumping on something 9 times rather than three is more challenging. Um, but then again, they are just three little pigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we also get a return of Tatanga, who was in the first game. I don't know if you're familiar with Tatanga.
I am now, but at the
Yes.
time, I think if there was one boss that I was most intrigued by, it would have been Tatanga because Tatanga feels like out of place on the roster of bosses. Like most of the bosses are just like animals or sort of like a cartoon, like you said, a generic witch
Mm.
cartoon character. But Tatanga is not like that, and Tatanga stands out. And so I did not know what Tatanga's deal was outside of he was the boss of the space zone and he was in a spaceship.
Mm.
But he stood out for that reason at the very least.
Yeah, I believe he shows up maybe once more in like a puzzle game
Mm.
somewhere, but he has long since abandoned the Mario series.
Yeah, I'm learning that a lot of the stuff in this game doesn't appear again outside of like a comic or some sort of like maybe CD software or something like that.
No, there's a couple of enemies from Mario Land 1 showed up in Mario Kart World. So,
Mm.
strange things have happened. It might be the case that there'll be a DLC update and the witch will be a character in Mario Kart or something. I don't know.
Imagine.
But I think Wario is the legacy of this game.
Yeah.
I don't think he's even on the box art or anything, but he's just so memorable. And within the next few years, they really shoved Wario down your throats in terms
Hmm.
of like, I think when he appeared in Mario Kart 64, that was probably when he like sort of arrived, and he is now part of the main roster.
Yeah. Has that been generally something you found with the Game Boy games in the Mario series that stuff doesn't tend to like graduate beyond that system?
Yeah, it's interesting because Mario Land 2 for a while, and both Mario Lands and the Wario Lands were not counted as like the core Mario series.
Mm,
What the core Mario series is fluctuates. Things
of
kind of get
course.
added and not. There's always different. It's like they'll put up all the games in a museum and they'll be like, oh, they added Mario Maker and something. And then
Yeah.
they'll put a list on a website and it's all different again. But I think currently the land games, I think for a little while, because Shigeru Miyamoto didn't work on them,
Hmm.
they were sort of seen almost like sort of licensed spin-offs, I suppose, with a slightly different team. But they have a few, like in terms of Mario Land 1 and 2, Princess Daisy and Wario are the things that have come from those games. So they've graduated.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tatanga, you have not yet. The main villain has not yet
Hmm.
found his way. But yeah, there's always odd games that or characters that sort of just get left behind.
Hmm.
Um, I know when Rosalina first appeared in Mario Galaxy,
Hmm.
it's sort of like great and all, but it's when they kind of get added to the Mario Kart roster where I feel like people, uh, Nintendo has sort of like blessed them as like they might be seen on a future console one day.
Yeah.
Um, what I find more interesting is that characters like Waluigi have not yet done the reverse. Like
Yeah.
he's only ever been in spin-offs. There's never been like a Wario and Waluigi game. which is really odd.
I feel like you hear that talked about a lot, in particular with Smash Brothers, because it seems like the easiest place you could put him. But it never occurred to me that he hasn't shown up in like any platformer or RPG or anything like that. That is kind of weird.
Yeah, I think it's one of the common dreams is for like a Wario, Waluigi something, be it a platformer or a RPG or something.
Seems like a no-brainer, right? Especially since they do Mario Brother like brand, like the Mario and Luigi branded stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me the reason Waluigi hasn't made it into Smash Brothers is it's not clear what you would draw from to make his moveset. Like, you could make him a Mario Tennis guy, or just someone who uses lots of sports stuff, or you could have a whole Mario Kart themed moveset, but it still wouldn't necessarily feel him. We don't quite know who he is, so I do think the world's missing a little bit of and he can't really be like a Echo Fighter for Wario or something. Waluigi's not even invited to the Wario Land, the WarioWare series,
which is wild.
Yeah,
like it's so wild to me that Wario not only got his own platforming spin-off of this game, but then got basically a second franchise where he has like his whole WarioWareification, process, and Waluigi is nowhere to be found even in that. This is a whole cast of new characters in there. I can't wait till you talk about those ones.
Well, I haven't had anyone suggest them yet, but I will give you all a tease. This is not the last time I'm going to be talking about Wario this month, actually.
Oh, nice.
Or at least within the next 4 weeks. Before we move on, let's talk about if you have any kind of negatives about this game.
Yeah, I do. Well, we've mentioned one that I don't know. It's a subjective negative more than it is like objectively a gameplay thing. It is an extremely easy game, which I think is part of what made me connect with it really, really early on as like a formative game. But if you're looking for like a challenging platforming game, like this kind of isn't it. And then even sort of within that context, the worlds for the most part are kind of evenly difficult, with maybe the exception of like some of the Mario Zone levels are like bizarrely difficult. And then the jump from like the worlds to Wario's castle is like there's a big disparity between difficulty. There's no real build up to that. And I'm guessing that's because it's non-linear, and so they want you to be able to start anywhere. But I do think something in the progression of difficulty is lost in that. So that's probably one thing.
For sure. I'm not sure how they would fix that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, you could do it so that maybe the Mario's Castle final level had kind of sections where like you unlock the first bit and then the next bit, and so that. But I don't know if that would make the game better necessarily.
Right. Or they would have to really like have each world progress in difficulty, but then you are not sort of experienced in the world as a whole, which I think would be less. I think the game would be lesser for that. I think the other thing is it is pushing the limits of what a Game Boy game can do, and sometimes you do feel that when there's a lot going on screen.
This game has a lot of slowdown, which I sometimes can be quite satisfying because it's you do feel your console heating up, but yeah, it's ambitious, which is very sweet. And actually, to be honest, its ambition is one element that I love. The sprites, they're really expressive. It's amazing how cartoony and how like great they can be, but in order to make the sprites so expressive, I do think the game has zoomed in a little too close. Like, you can kind of see Mario and then whatever enemy is next, but you can't really get a bigger picture of the level. Which can make the game feel a little claustrophobic, which I think works great for some of the levels. Like there's the sort of like submarine level and when you're trapped inside a tree, but there's other levels where there's a whole world built around shrinking
Yeah.
And I like the sprites. It's quite funny jumping over ants and stuff, but like I wonder if that would have been more effective if you could see a little bit more of the size difference.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting way to go about that zone for sure. I wonder someone has to have done this, I'm assuming, but I wonder if someone has done like a wider ROM version of this, and I wonder how that would feel because the levels themselves also aren't particularly long. So I wonder what it would be like to not change the game but see more as is, you know? It might not be bad at all, honestly.
Yeah, think about there's certain levels where you have to wait for moving platforms to appear. And
Yeah.
I think if you could see more, you would probably just fly through that level, just
Yeah,
jumping and everything.
right.
So yeah, it's interesting because as a kid, I didn't even notice this. I just kept playing
Mhm.
it over and over again. But as an adult, um, you can beat this game in 40 minutes,
Yep.
maybe without even you're not even speed running or anything,
Yep.
especially because not all the levels are required to get
Right.
to credits. But it's small. But I'd also think like the game before this, Mario Land 1, is so much smaller. I think this is one of the biggest leaps from like game 1 to game 2 I've ever seen in terms of ambition
Yeah.
and scale.
Yeah, it's like surprising to learn that the same people made it because they feel like they are so different in that leap.
Yeah, it feels. I'm sure they really like Mario Land 1, but I do feel this game was almost made to prove something.
Sure.
And yeah. And I think they did. I think they did prove whatever they were intending to prove.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. Ooh. Welcome. It is quickfire question time round, the time where we just race to the finish with a bunch of silly questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Cool. So, who is your main in Mario Kart and spin-offs?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer would just be to say Wario, but I can get more specific than that. In Mario Kart, it's been Inkling Boy since they were added to Mario Kart 8. Prior to that, it was Wario and his big bikes on both Mario Kart 8 and on Wii. In Mario Party, it is always Wario. I'm not usually fighting people for that, so I get to do that. And then in Smash Brothers, I'm a boring Pokemon fan. I started with Pikachu. My main right now is Lucario, but I also like playing with like ice climbers. I like characters that can be kind of annoying, to be honest. So I like Falco, I like DDD. Characters that, like, if you can pull off what they're doing, it's so satisfying. And I like Castlevania, so I like Richter a lot.
Nice. Which deep cut Mario character, which can be from this game, would you like to see added to the regular Mario Kart roster?
I did pick one from this game because there is an enemy we didn't talk about named Kurokura who appears one time in this game in one location and serves solely the purpose to get to a one-up platform, but he's so cool. It's like a little vampire who like commands bats and like and I think in the comic can like turn into a bat, and it's so wild to me that he appears in one spot that you might completely miss.
I jumped on him too quickly to like take him in. He's incredible. I would add there's an enemy in this game who I think shows up almost as infrequently, who looks not exactly, but looks like Sonic the Hedgehog. It's just an upright hedgehog with like white Mickey Mouse gloves on that like flashes and turns into a ball, and Sonic fully existed at this point. So we're on a loop with the music, sorry. So I would add him just for the troll element.
Yeah, I like it.
Which Mario character would you like most to see get their own Wario or Waluigi style doppelganger?
Yeah, I know that there was an artist who shared like a Wa Peach of some kind at some point, and so we got to see like a potential concept for that. But she was like really cute, and what I want is sort of like the big, gruff, rude, and a little bit mean version of Wa Peach. Like if you're gonna do a Wa version of Peach, I want you to go more in the Wario direction. So I would love to see what that looks like.
At least give her a big fat schnoz.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
cowardly otherwise.
Right.
So this game takes place in Mario Land, his private island, with several themed zones. What kind of zones would we expect to see on Doug Land?
Yeah, if I had a castle on my own island. I thought about this a lot, actually. I think there would have to be something relating to podcasting, but that's heinous, so let's call it a radio zone. I think there'd have to be some kind of paint zone that's sort of like an art-themed one. I work in a library, so give me a library book zone. Paying homage to Screonk, give me like a monster zone, like specifically with, kaiju in mind. I recently have dedicated myself to going to the movie theater a lot, so give me a cinema zone that's maybe like movie sets and theater specifically, more so than like movie homage. And then I think my sort of natural one, like, because there's got to be some naturey stuff, give me like a Survivor tropical island sort of themed zone, because I feel like I have to represent that too.
I think the Survivor Zone feels like level 1.
Yeah.
Like getting you into it. I love the idea of the library zone specifically because you could like dip into some books here and there, like you could jump right into them, and then you could have as the boss of that zone the Dracula enemy who like comes out of Dracula. That could be really fun.
It'd be perfect.
And then finally, just a question to round this off. Mario is a plumber who now owns a private island bought for him by a princess. Is he a class traitor?
It hadn't occurred to me, but I think we've discovered that maybe he is a little bit, and he needs a reminder now and then, where somebody comes in and steals it from him to remind him that maybe he didn't always have that. Wario's just doing a service and eating the rich a little bit.
Look, at the end of this game, you get your castle back, you boot Wario out, and yet for the rest of time, we never see Mario living in a castle again, but we do see Wario living in a castle. So I think
missing
there's
chapter.
a Zelda-style split timeline where the rest of the Mario series takes place in the world where you didn't get your castle back and Wario just kept it.
I like it.
So that about does it for a Super Mario moment and our chat about Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. Are there any other things about the game that we didn't touch on that you'd like to?
Just a weird little trivia thing. I'm wearing my bunny ears. The power-ups in this game are different and don't appear as they do in this again. So instead of like a Tanuki situation, you have bunny ears that let you float. And then I think because it would be really hard to depict the Fire Mario costume, questionable choice, but he gets like a feather on his head instead. And I always thought that was interesting to learn that they never show up again, because that's how I learned those powers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't think there's any other way to really change it because it's black and white console. The ears are funny because they're very cute, and in the great grand tradition of the Mario series, you get an animal power up which makes you fly, but it's not an animal that can fly.
Right. I don't get it. But Bunny Mario is one of the cutest power ups I think he's ever had, personally.
There is a movie critic who gets she's a bit of a kooky character, but she does get a lot of hate online, and I think sometimes not warranted. She's called Grace Randolph, and she gave the Mario movie a negative review, and a lot of people criticized her. But I think it's very valid because she was watching this movie having never played a Mario game, bewildered, and she says, and then he touches a leaf and he turns into a raccoon and he starts flying. Like, what is going on? And people were like mocking her because she likes superhero movies and crazy stuff happens in those. Where I'm like, at least in those they occasionally explain themselves.
Spider-Man is a guy with spider powers. He crawls on walls and has webs. Like there's a line of logic, you know?
I think Mario eating a carrot and turning into a bunny is absolutely perfect and adorable.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he doesn't really fly. He like bloop,
Yeah.
bloop, 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 floats.
He jumps higher, which makes sense, and then his
Hmm.
little ears sort of flap.
I always, for some reason, associated Bunny Mario with on the cover of Mario All Stars for the Super Nintendo. He's
Yeah.
kind of dressed as a magician.
Yeah.
And I always thought like a bunny magician thing, like it
Oh,
would be quite fun for a Bunny Mario to have a like teleport out of a hat type thing going on.
that would be really cool. I'm like
Um,
trying to envision how that could work in the world, and I'm envisioning cool things.
and of course, bunnies show up throughout the series again. They're very featured in Mario Odyssey with the Broodals
Hmm.
and chasing bunnies in Mario 64. So they're remembered, but I'm not sure if we'll ever see the carrot again, sadly.
Sadly.
As cute as it is. Well, I will love to end this by letting you do as much plugging as you like, and I would love to take this opportunity as my first Glitterjaw guest to just talk a little bit about the Glitterjaw network and collective, and
Yeah.
talk about your shows. We'd mentioned novel gaming, but what else are you up to?
Yeah, so for me and Derek, it started with Walloping Web Snappers, which is a weekly Spider-Man podcast, and we're specifically deep diving into every animated version of Spider-Man. So we've covered a bunch of shows in their entirety, but there are some shows that are very, very big. So we'll have a while to go before we get to everything. And there's always a Spider-Man show happening, so
Mm.
it'll probably go forever. We then kind of spun that off into a Pixar movie marathon where we watched every Pixar movie chronologically because Derek hadn't seen most of them, and I am a bit of a Pixar fanboy, even though Pixar and I are kind of fighting right now. We finished that, or at least got caught up to the movie. So then that inspired what you mentioned earlier, Screonk, which is sort of a role reversal where I had seen almost no Godzilla movies, and Derek is a massive Godzilla fan. So he's been taking me through the entire filmography of Godzilla, and he's not doing it chronologically, which I think has turned out to be really rewarding for me in particular, because he's kind of
Mm.
building a particular journey for me to meet characters and see kind of like a larger, bigger picture, which is a lot of fun. That one's been a blast.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of all these shows. Walloping Web Snappers was really fun to listen to when Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man was coming out, because
Yeah.
I was enjoying it, but I had no one to talk to about it. So that was really fun. And presumably you'll be back talking about season 2 whenever that
Oh
comes
yeah.
out. I've been a guest on Falling with Style to talk about one of the least Pixar-y type films ever.
Yeah.
But similarly, I saw Elio and had no one to talk to about it because no one else saw that movie. And so I listened to both your "Yay, that was a fun movie" episode and your "Boo, why did
I
they do that"
know.
episode. So that was a fun week.
I know. As far
And
as few people seeing Elio, like not only that, I like have Elio merch that eventually will be like the last piece of Elio merch.
hey, I went to the Disney parks like a year or two ago, and I cheered as much as I could for the Luca and Turning Red
Oh,
people in the parades, because
yeah.
there was definitely people in the audience who had no idea who those characters were.
It
And I was
breaks my
like, they're
heart.
my boys. And then obviously Screonk, which I have secretly like backseat produced at times because I've been sending your co-host Derek, who's going to be on this show in a few weeks. Are you doing this movie? Are you doing this movie? Are you doing this movie? And so many questions. And it's such a good show, very well researched. They're really long episodes, so they usually take me a couple of dog walks to listen to, and they're really fun. And I've been a guest on that a couple of times, talking about Mothra and something else.
King Kong Escapes, I
King
think,
Kong
right?
Escapes, yes. But it's a lot of fun. And those shows are what brought me to Glitterjaw, and now I listen to all of them. And I'm very touched that you came on the show to talk about Mario Land.
Yeah. I'm very happy to be here.
We are going to have a few more Glitterjaw friends joining us for the rest of the month, I believe. Next week, in fact, We're going to have David talking about Mario 64.
Ooh.
Heard of it? It's a big one. And then I believe after that, we'll be having Derek talking about the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which will be our first true non-gaming episode. So look forward to all of that. I'm just going to take a little moment to plug myself because this month, my book, Go Man, Champion of Earth, comes out for probably more enjoyable for fans of Skreonk. This is a kaiju-based superhero, and it's actually quite Spider-Man-y. Graphic novel. It's about an autistic boy who becomes a kind of Ultraman style hero. It comes out this month. You can pre-order it wherever you get your comics or your books. It all helps me. Thank you very much. As I said, we'll be back next week talking about Mario 64. And this has been a blast. Thank you for joining. Next time, so long, gay Bowsers.